to the third edition of the OzResistance Weekly News Roundup. I'm your host, Bibbulmun. Now, what does the age of Aquarius girls do when their dad won't give them an iPhone or allow their 14-year-old daughter to sleep over at their boyfriend's place? Well, you rush down to the local DCP office and you cry rape. And that's what's happened to one of our very good, astute activists in Northern this week. And our heart goes out to that gentleman, who I won't name at this point, who's, of course, a DCP with their lemonous thespians have jumped in and stolen both his children. Well, and that's what happens in the age of the Aquarius children today. Now, moving to Western Queensland, the Muttaburra men, a group of astute farmers up there that have been battling the banksters and trying to hold on to their properties and exposing the corrupt system. And we've got a report in today from Dennis Fay, CPO, who's one of the Muttaburra men. I'll just read out: Queensland corporate militia harassed drought-stricken farmer at Muttaburra over non-payment of firearm registration. Yesterday afternoon, 6 police vehicles unlawfully entered the property of John and Lindy McClement, Dun Rossi. Armed police, including 2 senior inspectors from Townsville and Longreach, surrounded the homestead and demanded that the occupants come outside to be stressfully separated and interrogated. Meanwhile, the owner, John, was en route from Longreach. On arrival, John was quickly accosted by police wanting to inspect firearms and storage facilities, declining an offer of hospitality, a cup of tea, until the said firearms were viewed, then confiscated. The saga continues today. Now, what's it all about? Well, the National Bank want to steal the property away from them, don't they? So they're making sure that there's no one there capable of defending themselves. We'll hopefully be interviewing Dennis Fay, CPO, on the show next week. And we're hearing a lot more about that saga. It's been going on up there for a long time, and they've got a very astute lawyer taking the banks on right to their very power base in New York.
Special guest this week is a man from up Geraldton Way, forthright freedom fighter, former police officer for the West Australian Police Force, and what I like to term everybody's favourite activist, Mr. Wayne Glew. How are you, Wayne?
I'm very well, thank you.
I believe you've finally battled your way into that High Court.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of issues with the Western Australian Constitution and how it was modified since Federation, and we raised through the years several constitutional issues in relation to that, again in relation to the Office of Governor and the State Electoral Act. They were all put in place with letters patent and they've never been complied with. So we discovered that the State of Western Australia has never been lawfully constituted. So when we filed in the High Court, they gave us leave to appeal and we lodged the documents.
Yeah, it's been quite a bit of a journey getting in there. I know you, from past conversation with you, you've had a couple of attempts to get in there, and I know there's plenty of other people that are having difficulty getting into that High Court, but it's not supposed to be like that, really, is it?
No, it's not. It should be a lot easier than it is. I personally have spent 8 years putting different things into court cases and challenging the ability of the court to actually constitute a lawful court. At the end of it, we have enough, I believe, to force the state government of Western Australia to stand down and establish a new state government lawfully under both the state and Commonwealth Constitution. And to force a review of all court decisions since Federation, because none of them are done under a lawful constitution, therefore they're invalid.
Well, that's pretty serious stuff, all right. And when we talk about the state constitution, I believe there's actually more than one constitution, isn't there?
Well, there is 2. The one that they put in place with Federation with 32 sections missing, and they've removed a heap more since then. But Queen Victoria on the 29th of October 1900, put the state constitution in as at 1889 with a letters patent. And under the statute of monopolies, that cannot be changed. They only have the power of alteration. So the fraud one put in at Federation was a fraud.
So where do these people get off just changing the constitution that we all have to live under and abide by? It's quite incredible, isn't it?
Well, it's not only incredible, it's incredibly stupid of them, because at the end of the day, that is treason. That's a breach of allegiance they owe to the people. Therefore, all their property that they have should be forfeit to the Crown, and it will be. And they got a great joy about a High Court case a few weeks ago, where the High Court ruled that they could seize property under the property seizure orders in relation to drugs. Well, how do they like it when they have to comply with the Constitution and forfeit all their property? Because every single one of them have been living on the proceeds of crime. Their crime sitting in our courts, sitting in our Parliament, and lying to the people.
Yes, it's not a good situation, and just developments in the last 12 months, we seem to be hurtling towards a police state, if not a fascist dictatorship.
Well, it is a dictatorship now because it's a corporation, and everything inside the area of that corporation, which is the state of Western Australia, belongs to the corporation of the state of Western Australia, and it doesn't end there. The state of Western Australia is a subsidiary company of the Commonwealth of Australia Corporation, registered on the US Securities Exchange Commission. It is one huge, massive fraud and a rort on us. We're paying our properties off and we don't own them. They belong to some yank who's got shares in our company.
Yeah, so the farmers are finding out now with the gas frackers just cutting their fences and driving in with the drilling rigs, and basically they haven't been able to do anything about it, other than protest, of course.
Well, this is true, but I mean, there's nothing to stop them actually filing in the High Court against them.
Right.
But I mean, you can't go into the state courts because they're crumbled and they're fraudulent.
Right. Just for our listeners and my own benefit, what's your interpretation of original jurisdiction in the High Court? Should anyone just be allowed to go and file there as they please?
Yes, as long as it's in relation to constitutional issues. Basically, the High Court there is as a mediator between the government and us, telling the government your laws are invalid and they must comply with the Constitution. But if you look at the Constitution, the annotated one on page 791, it says not only the High Court but any court of competent jurisdiction can declare a law of the Commonwealth of the state to be invalid by transgressing the Constitution. It's a duty cast upon the court by its very judicial function. So whether they get off just ignoring us, they can't do it.
Yes.
But they have been.
Yes, I know Robert Paul, CPO, tried to file a constitutional matter, and they told him, wrote back and said that he can't file it until he has a case already running in the High Court. Well, if that's not a catch-22, I don't know what is.
Well, that's what prerogative writs and mandamus, prohibition, and certorium habeas corpus are about under 75.5 of the Constitution. They're prerogative writs, original jurisdiction in the High Court. The unfortunate thing is, we have registrars that seem to think they shouldn't be filed there until we can convince the court itself that it must take those documents. We're in a catch-22 situation with that. However, I've attempted to file them, some other friends have. In the end, we'll get them there. It's just perseverance, and I'll tell you what, you have to be accurate in everything you do. The High Court expects a very high standard. Whether they should get it or not, it's not my opinion that they shall have such a high standard. Joe Blow off the street, if he has a grievance under the Constitution, should be able to go to his court and put his story to the court and get a result according to the provisions of the Constitution. That is not always the case. It seems that the barristers and lawyers think that they have special access to our court. It is not theirs. It's ours. It belongs to us, the people.
Yes, they think it's exclusive to them.
Well, you know, when you look at the common law, lawyers should not even be practicing in our courts.
Well, yes.
The common law is the King James Bible that says that they're just liars, thieves and cheats and deceivers of the people. I mean, that wouldn't apply to all of them. I know a few, they're nice guys. So there's a lot that's exactly what they are, but, you know, the Constitution recognises legal practitioners, not lawyers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of difference.
And
a lot of difference.
Under common law, when you talk about the high standards that they demand and their forms and all the rest of it, and the High Court's not alone there. I think most of the courts are demanding their particular forms are used now. But if you look at it, go back 100 years or more under common law, you could write out your application handwritten and go and put it in.
Well, in actual fact, if it's legible, written in black biro, so it will go through their computers, there isn't anything really now to stop you doing it. But, you know, I would say, so there's no misgivings about what you've actually written. You know, the average person can grab hold of a computer or get into one of these computer parlours, whatever they call them, and type up their documents. It's not really rocket science. I mean, some people need a hand, and we're actually providing that service pretty well for free to help people do that. But it's very complicated, and I don't think it should be that complicated. It should be made a lot more simple.
No, exactly right. Is there anything else on the news front that you'd like to put out there for our listeners?
Well, anybody who raises a constitutional issue in a court, either magistrates court, district court, Supreme Court, whatever, if that constitutional issue is a serious enough nature, like the validity of the court is challenged and we know they're not valid, they can always go under Rule 26 of High Court Rules and file a Form 17, which is an application for removal. I'm not saying you're going to get it, but if you do it, you've got to be very, very precise with the way you word it and the affidavit, because it is purely in relation to a constitutional issue. And I mean, we've tried a couple and been rejected, but we've got some that are being looked at, so we can't really say whether it's going to work. But I'm confident that we can get in there, but we just have to be a little bit more precise with our paperwork, and we're capable of doing it.
Yes, well, as the OzResistance Network's based in Perth, and we're certainly recognise that Western Australia seem to be running their own race, so we're very happy about what you're doing in the High Court, and we'll be following it very closely. Have they given you any sort of indication when you might get a hearing or a result?
No, I only filed my case on the 29th of May. I don't expect to hear for a couple of months at least, but, you know, I do it with all confidence. We have some pretty good judges in the High Court. I've looked at their decisions, they're precise, and they're pretty good in line with the Constitution. They correct earlier things that weren't correct. And all in all, I think Justice French is doing a real good job. I've got the confidence that he will find according to the Constitution, and if that's the case, we're going to win. Well,
geez, I hope you're right, Wayne, because we'd love to see this state pulled back into line, because they're certainly out of line at the moment. And
I realise that nobody does more than me. You know, they've tried to block me several times with different issues, but if you get back in their face and you're correct in law, most of the judges actually know it. There's a couple there that shouldn't be there, and I'm not going to go into that issue because I've already told him what I think of him to his face. I don't like going behind people's back. You tell someone to their face they don't like it, tough, get over it. But at the end of the day, you know, the majority of them, even though they lean towards government policy more than the actual law, they're doing a pretty tough job because they're under a lot of pressure from the government to follow their policy and not the law.
Yeah.
And that should not be. It shouldn't be.
Well, look, the average activist that I interact with, at the end of the day, you know, we can discuss the ins and outs of it all day long and all the legal issues, but at the end of the day, I think people just want a fair deal. You know, and the Constitution was put there to protect us and to make sure that we always got a fair deal. And it's not happening, is it? You know?
No, it's not. I've spent a lot of years, nearly 40, studying the Constitution, and I'm actually lecturing on different issues in the Constitution to different people all over Australia. But at the end of the day, it's a lot to learn. It's very precise, but it is relatively easy to understand. It was written by some pretty brilliant people, and if they get hold of it, it's best to get the annotated Constitution, because it's basically the Hansard of what took place, and it explains in detail what each section moves. I know a lot of people are going to agree with me, but boo-hoo, get over yourself. You can understand the Constitution if you read the annotated one. It has the actual text of the Constitution. Then it says how they come about it, what they referred to, what decisions in other countries which are relevant, and there is lots. Because we're a self-governing colony of England, whether anyone likes it or not, and we can only going to stay that way until we, the people, dissolve our Constitution, which we, the people, put in place. Not the government. The government is subservient to us. They're not superior. Page 702 says the Parliament's not superior.
Yes.
791 says neither the federal nor the state parliament are sovereign bodies. The people are. That's what Chapter 5 is about. The states and the people. The sovereignty of the people. And if you're sovereign, nobody rules over you, they rule for you. And that's what Parliament needs to understand. They're there to rule for us, not over us. If they rule over us, they breach the oath of allegiance they owe to us. That is treason.
Yes, my understanding of it is that at Federation, Parliament lost its sovereignty, and sovereignty was handed to the constituency, which is us.
Well, that's pretty well clear, except for the fact they were never sovereign. They were only semi-sovereign, the same as the British Parliament. They were always subservient to the Queen. Now, they lost that. Justice Isaacs, if you read the Hansard from 1898 in the Australasian Council, he said, at Federation, the parliaments of the states lose any semblance of sovereignty, and it goes to and remains with the people until the people decide to give it up. That's pretty clear. The people are sovereign, the Parliament's not. The Parliament should shut its mouth, adhere to the Constitution. They are a legislature. They are there to explore and pass legislation that is put together by the Governor in Council, which is the executive government. The government that sits in our Parliament is not the executive. That's a fraud. When the governor is part of that so-called executive government that we have, that is a fraud too. Unfortunately, Mr. McCusker is a very nice person. He's a good friend of a friend of mine, but at the end of the day, he knows the score, and they should all know the score. There's no excuse for saying, I don't know, because I do know.
Yes, Mr.
The fact is they do know. If they don't, they're deemed to know because they're administrating law. And if they don't know, why don't they? And what the hell are they doing sitting in our Parliament if they don't know the ultimate law of this country, which is the Constitution? And the state Constitution and all its laws are subject to the Commonwealth's one.
Yes.
There's no escape from that. There's none at all.
I agree with everything you've said here, Wayne. I just wish these politicians would sit up and listen and start doing the right thing. And I agree that Malcolm McCusker is a good bloke, and he's also a good friend of a friend of mine. And I know he's going to be hearing soon about some children's matters, because I'm not sure that many people realise the responsibility for the children in the state. The buck actually stops with the governor. And they've got
well, that's right. If you read Chapter 2 of the Commonwealth Constitution, under the Governor General, it also refers to the state governments. And the state, the letters patent putting in place the office of Governor for the state of Western Australia, which is part of Chapter 2 of the Constitution, verbatim, it states clearly the Governor is the highest authority in government in this state, and he must be obeyed. I can show you the paragraph, and that's what's before the High Court.
Yes, I got off the track there a bit. I was actually referring to statute law. I've had some statutes put in front of me that actually call up the Governor as being responsible for all the children in the state, but that's under the statutes.
Well, statute is corporate law, so you don't want to get into that, because if you're employed by statute, you're a creature of statute and not an officer of the Crown. That's a ruling recently of the High Court.
Yes.
So if they don't like that tough, if you are under state acts and statutes, you've got a huge problem.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And our public officials, our police officers, and everybody running around with the crown on their shoulder need to start realising what that crown actually stands for, because I don't think many of them do.
Well, there's no point having a crown if under it you've got a false emblem when you're supposed to have the royal identifier, which should always be there, which is the lion and the unicorn.
Exactly.
Now, I don't care what they think. The police officers are officers of the Queen and answerable to the Crown. They're not answerable to the Parliament. And that's where things go wrong, when the Parliament tries to control the police and the courts and the so-called executive, which we actually don't have at present.
Yeah, just on that issue of the Royal Identifier, I was in a court the other day watching a case, and they had the state corporate seal up behind the judge, the double kangaroo, and then a prisoner from one of the state prisons came on for his case on video, and behind the prisoner was the Royal Identifier with the lion and the unicorn. Now, are they trying to get both ways, or they want the cake and or what's going on?
Well, see, a lot of the prisons have been built for a long, long time. And once that Royal Identifier is on there, they're heritage listed. And if they're on the outside wall, they can't remove them under that law. But at the end of the day, that twin kangaroos is just a perfect emblem of a kangaroo corpse. That's all it is. It has absolutely no value in law. It's not sitting under the Crown. It's sitting under a piece of junk, which is a corporate emblem of the corporation of the state of Western Australia. It's a farce.
Yes, yes. Well, you're a champion, Wayne. It's been great talking to you, and we're all praying for you, and we're all watching what's going on, and because if you succeed, everybody succeeds. And
yeah, well, I'm doing it for fun. I'm having a ball. But see, I've got 8 kids, and I'm doing it for them. And I've got a huge, big family. I'm the second eldest of 14. And my father fought in the war. My mother made cakes for Mills and Wares for all the soldiers. This is crap what's going on. This is a free country. Well, you would think it is. At present, it's a corporate company. And these idiots think they're going to take it off as well. When all else fails, Clause 61 comes up, and there is no recourse in law for anything we do under that. So better get with the program. I'm not threatening them. I'm just stating a fact. There's that many people that I've been able to hold off from taking drastic action that are not going to stand it for much longer. Right. We have to have proper constitutional and common law in this country. Go back to where it belongs and stop pandering to the world governments. We are not part of the one world government. We are an independent, self-governing colony of England. We're independent because we have a constitution, which is a contractual agreement between us and the Crown of England. Not the Queen, the Crown, the system.
Yes. Yes.
And that can't be broken except by us.
I'm hearing you. I hope they'll be hearing you. I know there's a lot of those boffins that are listening to our program now, and so they'll be hearing you, and I hope they hear you loud and clear, Wayne. And
well, if they want to know about the Constitution, give me a ring. I can teach them.
I think some of them do need a bit of a lesson on the Constitution. You know, they've found themselves in these high positions of power, but they've just been put there, a lot of them, and by the corporation, as you say. And,
you're right. I interviewed quite a few of the politicians at the state parliament through a friend of mine, and most of them didn't know that the Constitution was still in place, and the ones that didn't think it had any relevance. How good's that?
Yeah,
bird brain sitting in Parliament. How good?
Yeah.
Rubbish. That's all it is, rubbish.
Exactly right. And it's got to be stopped and turned around, and yep. And we'll see what happens. It's been good talking to you, Wayne. And thanks for your time, and we'll be watching your story closely and your court case, and we're all in there with you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for your time too. You have a good day.
No worries. That was Wayne Glew, CPO, talking to us from Geraldton, and he's been touring the country, and I believe he's off to Tasmania shortly.
Asleep in your home on a Sunday morning at 7:15, and there's a knock on the door, being some fellow in plain clothes claiming to be a local resident that's been broken into, and asking for assistance if you've might have some CCTV footage or the like showing the burglars in the area. I mean, what would you do? Well, you might ask him in to view your CCTV footage, but in the police state of WA, it's just likely to be a corrupt cop. And our dodgy officer of the week this week is Constable Brad Michau, spelled M-I-C-H-A-U, formerly from the Kwinana Police, who pulled off a crime at the front door of Robert Paul CPO's house on the 3rd of October 2012. So just take a look at this. Here he is, talking to Robert Paul through the door, claiming to be this person that he's not, looking for help. Then he tries to force entry into the house, and pulls out some documents to serve, doesn't identify himself, then he dumps the documents on the doormat and runs away. And in the police state of Western Australia, apparently that's been served, and it happened to be a restraining order, which was supposed to be read out. And if you just have a look at that again, you'll see Michau pulls out his wallet at the last minute. Now, in the real world, when a police officer comes to your front door, apart from he should be wearing a uniform, if he's in plain clothes, the courteous thing to do and the regulatory thing to do is to pull out his identification and flash it up and say, "Hello, I'm a police officer. I'm here to do some business with you." But not in the corrupt state of Western Australia. Of course, they do as they please. Dump the papers on the doormat and run away. Then go back down to his police station and file a report telling the government that the documents have been served. Robert Paul CPO was later charged with breach of that restraining order and convicted in absentia in a kangaroo court in Joondalup. Only in the fascist state of Western Australia. I'm your host, Bill Bibbulmun. Until next week, stay active, stay safe, and keep up the good fight.